There's a gentle lie the world tells about survival. It says that those who endure life's toughest challenges come out stronger because they persevered, as if it were a matter of muscle, as if you were simply tougher than others. But what if that's not the case? What if the difference between someone who emerges from a breakdown more whole, more authentic, clearer about who they are, and someone who emerges merely exhausted has nothing to do with resilience? What if it has to do with something that was placed within you before you even knew you needed it? Scorpio isn't the sign that endures the most. It's the sign that sees the most, especially into what should have blinded them. And that's not a generic compliment. It's a specific structure that explains why your life worked the way it did. Why the moments that shaped you the most came wrapped in loss. Why you go deep when everyone else stays on the surface. Why you survived what many couldn't endure. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a coincidence. By the end of this video, something inside you will make sense in a way it never has before, not as a theory, as recognition, like that feeling of finally having words for something you've known in your body for a long time. Imagine a forge. The iron goes in soft. The heat isn't punishment, it's the process. The blacksmith isn't destroying the metal. He's revealing what it always had the capacity to be. But the iron doesn't know this while it's inside. It only feels the heat. It only feels the pressure. It only feels that something that was one way is being forced to be another. You've stepped into this forge more than once. You came out different. And at some point, probably alone, on a night no one knows ever happened, you asked yourself, why me? Why does everything seem more intense, heavier, more real than for most people? Why, when others seem to skim the surface of things, do you always go deep, even when you don't want to, even when you're tired? The world's response to this is usually superficial. They say you're strong, that Scorpios can endure, as if it were a matter of muscular endurance, as if you were born with a higher pain tolerance, and that's all there is to say. But that's not it. It never was. What sets Scorpio apart isn't the ability to endure pain. It's what happens to you during it, while most close their eyes and wait for it to pass, you see. You observe your own collapse with a disturbing lucidity. You feel everything at once. The fear, the anger, the sadness, the confusion. And in the midst of it all, there's a part of you that remains awake, cataloging, understanding, reorganizing what's falling apart around you with a precision you yourself can't explain. This is rare. It's much rarer than you think. And there's a reason for that, not a poetic reason, a structural reason, something that was placed within you even before you realized you needed it. An inner architecture that wasn't chosen, it was given. And understanding that architecture changes how you interpret everything that came before. But before we get to that, I need to ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that the things that shaped you the most weren't the ones you planned? That the moments that truly changed who you are came wrapped in losses, in ruptures, in those nights when the ground disappears beneath you? There's a pattern to it. It's not random. And when you start to see it clearly, something inside you reorganizes itself in a way that doesn't yet have a name, but that you will recognize when you feel it. And this is exactly where most people stop. They feel the weight of it, recognize the pattern, and then let it go, as if recognizing it were enough. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. It's not a list of zodiac sign characteristics. It's a map specifically designed for those who have descended deep enough to know that there's more than just destruction down there, and who are trying to understand what to do with what they've found. For Scorpio, this book speaks directly to what happens when you stop fighting the depths you carry and start using them intentionally. Because there's a huge difference between sinking and diving. Sinking is involuntary. Diving is a choice. Scorpio has the rare ability to transform one into the other, but only when they understand what they're doing and why. This map shows you how. You are in this moment right now, still processing, still with that feeling that something has touched you that you don't quite know how to name. This discomfort that is active now is exactly the state in which this map makes the most sense. Not tomorrow. Now, while the perception is still alive, the link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, what was the hardest thing you went through that, looking back today, you realize gave you something you wouldn't have had any other way? A single sentence says a lot. There is an ancient theology, not necessarily religious, but spiritual in the most direct sense of the word, that says certain beings are placed in the world after a selection process that most never see. It's not arrogance, it's structure. It's the recognition that some souls are destined to go through fire because fire is the only process that reveals what they have inside. That the pressure wasn't placed there despite them, but because of them. Because there was something valuable that needed to be extracted in that specific way, with that specific level of heat. Scorpio was built for this, not to suffer more than others as a final destination, but to understand more, to go deeper, to access layers of human experience that remain completely blocked for those who haven't gone through what you've gone through. These layers aren't dark by nature. They're dense because they're rich, like ore, like sediment millions of years old. Only those who descend can reach them. And here's the paradox that no one can quite explain. The more you tried to be like everyone else, lighter, more detached, easier to get along with, the more wrong you felt. The more you felt like you were wearing clothes that weren't yours, because you were made for depth. Trying to live on the surface, for Scorpio, is like trying to breathe in an environment that doesn't have enough oxygen for your type of lungs. The wrong environment isn't a weakness of yours, it's incompatibility. Imagine a deep sea diver. He's not afraid of the darkness down there. He was built for it. He sees what nobody else sees because he goes where nobody else goes. He brings to the surface what nobody knows exists because only he has the structure to withstand the pressure of the bottom. The problem isn't the depth. The problem is when he tries to live like a pool swimmer, comparing himself to people made for a different kind of water. Have you tried doing this in any area of your life? Comparing your ability to process, to feel, to delve deep, with that of people who were literally built to operate on a different level. And there's more. There's a detail about the people chosen to go through intense experiences that almost no one mentions. They usually don't know they were chosen. They think they are victims of a harder life, or that there's something wrong with them. They interpret the intensity as punishment when it is, in fact, instruction, a curriculum, a specific training process that couldn't happen any other way. But choice and bad luck seem the same from the inside. The difference lies in what you do with what's left, and what remains within you after all that has come is no small thing. It's the raw material for something you're still discovering, something that could only be created through the kind of process you've gone through. What we've just named isn't abstract. It's the core of everything Scorpio carries. The difference between someone consumed by depth and someone who uses it as fuel. It has structure, it has a path, and that's exactly what the divine path that guides your zodiac, sign to a life of purpose, unveils from an angle you've probably never encountered before. The book shows how Scorpio can access the purpose embedded in their most extreme experiences, not despite them, but because of them. How to transform the weight of what you've lived through into clarity about what you should build now with who you've become. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a moment every Scorpio knows. It's not when the hard part happens, it's afterward, when the dust has settled, when the people around you have moved on, when the world expects you to have moved on too, and you're there, alone, still inside what happened. Not because you couldn't get out, but because you're processing something that others didn't even realize existed to be processed. You're extracting, you're distilling, you're doing work that has no name and no audience. This job is lonely, it always has been, and sometimes it feels like a flaw. This inability to simply move on like everyone else seems to be able to so naturally. But it's not a flaw. It's a difference in function. You weren't made to forget quickly. You were made to understand deeply, and those two things are incompatible. You can't have both. Scorpio's inner chamber, that space where you carry what you've experienced and won't let go until you understand what it meant, is your greatest power. Not what caused the event, what it signifies, what message it carries, what reorganization it demands. Scorpio doesn't end with the event. It begins with it, but this chamber is also your torment when you don't know it's a processing chamber, when you think it's a prison, when the time you spend inside feels like punishment and not work. The difference between using that inner space wisely and being devoured by it is subtle but absolute. It has everything to do with what you believe about what you're doing in there. If you believe you're just suffering, you become immobilized. If you understand that you're distilling, separating what had value from what was just noise, extracting the essential from what happened, you emerge with something that no tranquil experience could have given you. Gold isn't found on the surface. Everyone knows that. But what few people consider is what the great prospectors have learned over centuries. Knowing where to dig isn't enough. You need to know what to do with what you find. Because raw gold, taken directly from the earth, doesn't look like gold. It looks like dirty stone. It looks like nothing. It looks like you carried all that weight out only to find nothing of value. Did what you experienced seem like nothing for a while? Does it still seem like dirty stone somewhere in your memory? Perhaps it's gold that hasn't yet been worked, that hasn't yet gone through the process that transforms appearance into real value. That's still waiting for someone, you, to recognize what's hidden inside, what seems impossible to see. Scorpio spends their entire life learning to separate the gold from the stone within themselves. This inner work, which happens in silence, has no manual in the superficial world. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose was created specifically for those who understand that life has intention, that there is a purpose embedded in even seemingly meaningless experiences. The book shows how weight is transformed, how what you extracted from the inner chamber becomes the most solid foundation for what you will still build. For Scorpio, this is not motivation. It is recognition of something the body already knew. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a story that most people tell about Scorpio that is true in form but completely wrong in content. The story says that Scorpio is a phoenix, that it dies and is reborn, that it goes through fire and emerges from the ashes transformed, renewed, brighter than it was. It's a beautiful image, and it's real. But what nobody talks about is what happens in between. What nobody describes is the part that lies between death and rebirth. There is a period that has no glory, no cinematic drama, no epic soundtrack, only darkness. A dense and silent void where the old version is gone, with its habits, its certainties, its ways of relating to the world, and the new one does not yet exist. It has no form yet. It has no name yet. It has no instructions on how to function. It's the most disorienting moment in any Scorpio's existence because there's nothing to hold on to. No identity works in this space. No known strategy solves anything. You're between worlds, and the in-between has no map. Most people can't handle that in-between. They run away. They create any version of themselves that's functional enough to avoid feeling the emptiness. A version that makes sense to others, that seems to be okay, but that deep down they know isn't real, that it's borrowed clothing until the real one is ready. Scorpio sometimes does that too, but when they do, they know they're doing it, and that awareness, that unsettling lucidity about their own performance is what eventually brings them back to the real process. Because Scorpio wasn't born for functional versions, they were born for true versions. And true versions have a cost that most aren't willing to pay. The cost is precisely that in between, that nameless void where you don't know who you are for a while, where the old answers no longer work and the new ones haven't arrived yet, where the only sure thing you can do is remain present within the uncertainty, without forcing a form that isn't ready yet. How many times have you been there? And each time he left, what did he bring with him that definitely wasn't there before? This isn't poetry. It's the actual mechanism of your transformation, and it follows a pattern that once you learn to recognize it, completely changes your relationship with moments of dissolution. Because you stop being afraid of the in-between. You stop trying to skip that part, and you begin to recognize the void for what it is, the exact space where the next version of yourself is being formed, layer by layer, in a reorganization that couldn't happen any other way. The chrysalis is not protection, it is the process. What is inside is not resting, it is being completely disassembled and reassembled at the most fundamental level, not a reform. A reconstruction. Are you in a chrysalis right now? Is there something in some area of your life that seems stuck, suspended, without a defined form yet? If it is, that doesn't mean something went wrong. It means something is being redone in a way that will be more solid and truer than any previous version could have been. This recognition that the in-between is not failure, but a process, that the chrysalis is not a prison, but a laboratory, is exactly what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose offers in a concrete way. The book maps what happens during Scorpio's transformation and shows how to navigate this space with intention, so that what emerges on the other side is not just survival, but real clarity about who you have become and what to do with that now. For those in the chrysalis, for those in between, this is not a luxury, it's guidance at the right time. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's one last thing about Scorpio that I want to leave you with. It's not about strength, it's not about intensity, it's about something quieter than that, more permanent. Every being who has gone through what Scorpio goes through and who has emerged from each cycle still whole, still capable of feeling, still capable of trusting the process even without fully understanding what was happening, carries a kind of authority that has nothing to do with power over others. It's not hierarchical authority. It's the authority of experience. It's the kind of wisdom you don't learn in any book and don't acquire in any course. It only comes from having descended and returned, from having been in the in-between and emerging with something that didn't exist before. You didn't survive what you survived by accident, and that doesn't mean that everything that happened was necessarily fair or necessarily easy to accept. It means that you were made with a structure that can overcome what others couldn't, and that on the other side of each crossing, there's something in you that became more real, more dense in meaning, more capable of seeing what lies beneath the surfaces of things and people. This is rare in the world, much rarer than you realize when you're inside yourself. God, or the universe, or life, whatever you want to call it, didn't choose Scorpio to suffer more. He chose you to go deeper, to understand what others can't understand, to bring to light what others don't even know exists, to be the kind of presence in the world that's only possible after having gone through what you've gone through. So the next time the depths come, and they will, because that's how you grow, because that's how you were designed, Try to remember this, not as empty consolation, as real guidance. You were built for this. The forge is not punishment. It's the process that reveals what you always had the capacity to be, and you already know how to get through it. You've done it before, and you'll do it again, with more wisdom, with more clarity, with more awareness of who is being shaped in the heat of the moment. This is the path of Scorpio. Not the easiest, but without a doubt, the truest.